I wanted to build up a skill in filmmaking. This is what I was really interested in high school. I was like, I can do it again now. Maybe I'm 20.
Filmmaking, like making movies, documentaries, like what kind of stuff?
So I guess in the beginning, I wanted to be good at whatever I could be good. I wanted to be good at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a direction quite yet. So I read this book called Talent is Overrated. And in that book, they talk about the 10,000 hour rule. I'm sure you've heard about it in Malcolm Gladwell's book. And the 10,000 hour rule is just essentially you need 10,000 hours of practice, deliberate practice to become master class at something. Even people talk about this with comedians too. Or I think Louis C.K. has talked about people needing at least 10 years to get good or even decent. And so I broke it down. I looked at filmmaking systematically. Like, how can I week by week, day by day improve at this and get better at this? I created something called the Soul Filmmakers Workshop, which was a place where I could bring my films. Maybe there were little comedy sketches, short documentaries, stuff I did for clients, corporate work, and people could come and tear apart my content, and then that would help me to improve and get better over time. And so over a number of years in Korea, I was able to transition from teaching English to doing filmmaking full-time for clients. And so at this point, I don't have any really artistic goals in mind. It's just I want to figure out, if I ever get deported from this country, am I going to be able to go back to the USA and have a skill or a job or a trade I can fall back on? And eventually that answer was yes. Luckily, I never got deported. But living in Korea for 8 years was one of the most nerve-wracking things I'd ever done, because I was there on a tourist visa. And it's not something I've talked about a lot, but a tourist visa means you get to stay here for 90 days. As an American, you don't need any visa ahead of time, but you land on the spot, they give you a visa for 90 days, and then within 90 days you need to leave the country, but you can come back right away. But I did that for 8 years straight.
So you just kept leaving and coming back?
Right.
So where would you go?
So I really got it perfected, and I could do it for the least amount of money possible. I went from Seoul in the north of South Korea all the way down to Busan in the south to an island called Tsushima in Japan. And so I could wake up at 5 a.m., go all the way to Japan, and come back by evening. The nerve-wracking part wasn't the trip itself or the amount of money it cost, although that was a burden too because I didn't make that much money. But at immigration, on both sides, they would always ask, hey, you're teaching. You're a teacher, right? You teach. Even in Japan, going into Japan, they would say, what do you do? And I would have like a whole list of stories and answers lined up in my mind because it was so anxiety-inducing, especially coming back to Korea, because this is the stamp I really need. I need 90 days more of freedom when I land in Korea. I shouldn't say land, when I pull up at the port, because I would take a ferry. If I get this stamp, I get 90 more days to figure out my life, to move forward, and to have freedom. And standing in line for immigration, I'm looking, okay, there's an older guy over here. This lady looks nice. This young guy looks like he's got something to prove. And I would rehearse my story. What are you doing here? Oh, I love Korea. I love Korean. I love Korean food. Try to get him on my side. I plan to go to university soon. In Korea, I hope to study here. And then eventually would get through. But sometimes...
Were you speaking to them in Korean?
No, in English. So everybody, I would say in most places you go around the world at immigration, they're going to speak English. And a couple of times they took me to the side room. And that's really terrifying, especially because it wouldn't be as terrifying now because now I have resources. But back then I'm completely broke. And so one time they took me to the side room. They go, what are you really doing here? You're teaching, right? Just tell us where you're teaching.
Why did they think you were teaching?
Because a lot of people do what I was doing. They go there, they teach under the table. They don't have to pay any taxes. They just get paid cash. They leave every 90 days. They come back. Like, I rented an apartment in Korea. You just needed a passport. They weren't like, show me your labor contract, show me your visa. They're like, all right, you got key money, you got the deposit, you're good to go. And so I lived doing that for 8 years. While I'm doing that, I'm building up this these film skills, this ability to do filmmaking. And eventually, I go from making corporate videos to wanting to make content for myself. So this is where YouTube comes in. Making corporate videos sucks because clients have no idea what they want. When you make a corporate video, most companies, especially at that time in Korea, they'll say, we want a video introduction. We got to interview everybody.
How do you even get in contact with these people? Like, because you speak English.
Yeah.
I would imagine most of them speak Korean.
So there's a fascinating expat culture in most countries around the world, I'd say.
Really? So you ran into a lot of Americans over there?
There's a place called Itaewon. I mean, you might have heard of this tragedy recently in Korea where a bunch of people got crushed during Halloween.
Yeah.
So Itaewon is known as like the foreigner neighborhood, and people, all the foreign restaurants from around the world are there. Tons of foreigners live in the neighborhoods around there. So there's a huge expat community there in Itaewon. And so much so that you see, like what I had the Seoul Filmmakers Workshop. People had the Seoul, stand-up Seoul. So people did comedy locally. And in fact, they would invite some comedians from here. I think Kyle Kinane came once. James Adomian came once. And so they would fly over comedians. And the audience is, of course, all people who speak English. Some of them might be Korean who speak English, but there is between Yongsan is where there's a huge military base next to Itaewon. And then there's all the expats and teachers who are there too. So there is a gigantic community of foreigners there. And for whatever reason, Korean folks, some of the business owners there, especially in media, are interested in working with filmmakers, with voiceover artists, actors who are from outside of Korea. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's pretty
so
cool.
You're finding your way.
Well, and so I was able to find my way in, it's like that was my film school. Like I didn't go to a proper film school. I wouldn't have had the opportunities here. For example, doing corporate videos, doing Red Bull video. I did videos for Red Bull in Korea. At my level, I wouldn't have been able to do that here in the USA. And so I got to take part in things, in jobs and experiences that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
And so along the way, you say, I want to make some food videos.
Yes. So I'm getting sick of doing the client work. I want to make content for myself. I've read Gary Vee's first book, Crush It. And I want to crush it. And I love the book, and it taught me about content marketing, and that's something I started doing. Hey, instead of a corporate video, let's make you weekly videos or monthly videos, and from there you can offer value to the people watching, and then you can have a call to action. And I just thought, well, I could do this for myself. And I had a couple of different ideas, but the idea that stuck was doing food. And at the time, I had a couple of channels that really inspired me. I listened to H3H3, who did comedy at the time. And then I watched a channel called Jack's Gap. And he had this very wanderlusty travel videos that